The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony on Kepler 442c when the message arrived. Captain Lee Dong-ho was drinking his morning coffee in the command center when Communications Officer Yoon Ha-na rushed in with a pale face and shaking hands. She carried a data pad that seemed to burn her fingers as she held it. "Captain, we have a priority message from the Galactic Council," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The young woman had been handling alien communications for 2 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. Lee Dong-ho set down his coffee cup and looked at the data pad. The message was short and clear. 3 alien species had formed an alliance for the first time in galactic history. The Vulcan Empire, the Zephyrian Collective, and the Thorian Dominion had stopped fighting each other long enough to agree on one thing. Humans had to leave Kepler 442c within 72 hours or face complete destruction. "Get everyone to the main hall," Lee Dong-ho said calmly. His voice carried the weight of 20 years in the military and 5 years commanding this mining operation. "I want every person on this planet to hear this message." Within an hour, 2,000 colonists packed into the largest building on the planet. Miners, engineers, scientists, farmers, teachers, and children all crowded together. Some sat on boxes, others stood against walls, and many squeezed together on the floor. The air smelled of sweat, fear, and the metallic dust that covered everything on this mining world. Dr. Park So-jin pushed through the crowd and found a place near the front. She was the colony's chief scientist and the only person who had actually met aliens face-to-face during the early negotiations. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her clothes were dusty from working in the research labs. She knew more about alien psychology than anyone else on the planet, and what she knew made her stomach twist with worry. Engineer Kim Tae-won stood near the back of the room with his arms crossed. He was a big man with calloused hands and oil stains on his work clothes. For 3 years, he had managed the mining operations that pulled quantum crystals from deep beneath the planet's surface. These crystals were the most valuable substance in the galaxy, making faster-than-light travel possible for every species in known space. Captain Lee Dong-ho walked to the front of the room and activated the wall screen. The Galactic Council's message played for everyone to see. 3 alien ambassadors appeared on the screen, each representing one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Their faces were different, but their message was the same. The first alien was tall and thin with silver skin that seemed to glow. It spoke in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Humans of Kepler 442c, you have violated sacred territory. This planet and its crystals belong to the Vulcan Empire by ancient right." The second alien looked like a walking tree with bark-covered skin and eyes that glowed green. Its voice was deep and slow, like wind through a forest. "The Zephyrian Collective claims this world by conquest. Your presence here is an act of war against our people." The third alien was covered in scales and had teeth that looked sharp enough to cut steel. When it spoke, its voice hissed like steam. "The Thorian Dominion will not allow humans to steal what belongs to us. These crystals have powered our ships for 1,000 years. Then all 3 aliens spoke together. "You have 72 hours to evacuate completely. After that time, we will destroy every human on this planet. Our combined fleet of 300 warships is already surrounding your world. You cannot fight us. You cannot hide from us. You can only leave or die." The message ended, and silence filled the room. Children started to cry. Adults looked at each other with wide eyes full of fear. Some people began talking about packing their belongings. Others wondered if the transport ships could even carry everyone away in time. "Captain." Lee Dong-ho stood quietly for a long moment. Then he walked to his personal locker and pulled out a bottle of soju, the clear Korean alcohol he saved for special occasions. He opened the bottle with a sharp pop that echoed through the silent room. "Communications Officer Yoon Ha-na," he said in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the room. "Open a channel to the alien fleet. I want to send them a reply." Hana's fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "Channel open, sir. They're receiving our transmission." Lee Dong-ho looked directly into the camera that would broadcast his words to 300 alien warships. He held up the bottle of soju and spoke clearly. "Hold my drink. Then he took a long sip from the bottle and set it down on the communications console with a solid thunk. The sound seemed louder than it should have been in the quiet room. "End transmission," he said. The colonists stared at their captain. Some looked confused, others looked terrified. A few began to smile as they realized what had just happened. Their commander had just told the most powerful military alliance in galactic history to wait while he had a drink. Dr. Park So-jin was the first to speak. "Captain, with respect, what exactly is your plan here? We have 12 ships, most of them converted mining vessels. They have 300 military warships with enough firepower to turn this planet into space dust." Lee Dong-ho picked up his bottle and took another sip. "Dr. Park, how long have you been studying aliens?" 8 years, she replied. "And what have you learned about how they think?" Park So-jin considered the question carefully. "They follow rules. They respect hierarchy. They believe in overwhelming force and clear military doctrine. They think logically and plan carefully for every possibility." "Exactly," Lee Dong-ho said with a grin. "They think like soldiers. They follow patterns. They expect their enemies to behave rationally." He took another drink. "But humans don't always behave rationally, do we?" Engineer Kim Tae-won stepped forward from the back of the room. "Captain, are you saying we're going to fight them?" "I'm saying we're not going to run away," Lee Dong-ho replied. "This is our home now. We've spent 5 years building this colony. We've pulled enough quantum crystals out of the ground to power half the galaxy. We've made friends with this planet, learned its weather patterns, grown food in its soil." He, Guy, looked around the room at every face. "And now some aliens we've never met want us to just pack up and leave because they say so." A miner named Choi Min-ho raised his hand. He was young and reckless, the kind of person who volunteered for dangerous jobs because they seemed fun. "Captain, I used to pilot fighters in the Earth Defense Force. If you're looking for crazy people to fly impossible missions, count me in." More hands went up around the room. A tactical officer named Lim Ji-woo, who had been quietly analyzing alien fleet positions. A medic named Kang Ye-jin, who had kept the colony healthy through 2 epidemic outbreaks. A demolitions expert named Shin Woo-jin, who could make explosives out of mining chemicals. "We don't have military weapons," someone called out. "We have mining equipment," Kim Tae-won said with a growing smile. "Industrial lasers, heavy machinery, explosives for breaking rock, vehicles designed to work in dangerous conditions." He looked at Captain Lee Dong-ho. "If you want to fight, we can turn this entire mining operation into a fortress." Dr. Park. So-jin shook her head. "This is insane. Even if we could somehow damage their ships, we can't win against those odds. The smart thing to do is evacuate and find another planet." "Maybe," Lee Dong-ho said. "But I've never been accused of being smart." He held up his bottle again. "Besides, I'm not finished with my drink yet." The room erupted in nervous laughter. Fear was still there, but now it mixed with something else. Pride, stubbornness, the peculiar human tendency to dig in and fight when any reasonable species would surrender. Communications Officer Yoon Ha-na looked up from her console. "Captain, we're receiving angry messages from all 3 alien fleets. They want to know what hold my drink means." "Tell them they'll find out," Lee Dong-ho said. He turned to address the entire colony. "We have 72 hours to show the galaxy what happens when someone tries to kick humans off their own planet. Let's get to work." The next morning brought chaos to the mining colony, as 2,000 people tried to prepare for war against impossible odds. Captain Lee Dong-ho stood on the command tower, watching his people transform their peaceful mining operation into something that looked like organized madness. Engineer Kim Tae-won had not slept all night. He stood in the main workshop surrounded by mining equipment that was being converted into weapons. Industrial cutting lasers were being mounted on mobile platforms. Heavy excavation vehicles were being fitted with armor plating made from crystal-infused metal plates. The air smelled of welding sparks and determination. "These drilling machines can punch through solid rock," Kim Tae-won explained to a group of volunteers. "I figure they can probably punch through alien ship hulls, too." He patted the side of a massive boring machine that stood 3 stories tall. "We just need to get close enough to use them." Across the workshop, pilot Choi Min-ho was examining the colony's 12 ships with the critical eye of someone who expected to die in one of them. Most were converted cargo haulers with basic engines and minimal shielding. 3 were actual mining ships with industrial-grade cutting beams. 1 was a passenger transport that had brought the last group of colonists. "Captain, these ships are basically flying coffins," Min-ho said cheerfully. "The engines are designed for cargo hauling, not combat maneuvering. The hulls have almost no armor, and our weapons are mining tools that were never meant to fight military spacecraft." "Can they fly?" Lee Dong-ho asked. "Oh yes, sir. They can definitely fly," Min-ho replied with a grin that suggested he found the whole situation amusing. "They just might explode while they're flying, that's all." In another part of the colony, Dr. Park Seo-jin had set up her research station to study every piece of information the colonists had gathered about their enemies. The 3 alien species had been fighting each other for centuries over control of Kepler 442c and its quantum crystals. Only the arrival of humans had forced them to work together. "The Velkan Empire believes they have ancestral rights to this planet," she explained to Tactical Officer Lim Ji-woo. "The Zephyrian Collective claims it by conquest from a War 300 years ago. The Thorian Dominion says the crystals are sacred to their religion." She pulled up holographic displays showing the 3 alien fleets. "They hate each other almost as much as they hate us." Lim Ji-woo studied the alien ship formations with the intensity of someone trying to find a way to kill 300 enemies with 12 ships. She was small and quiet, but her mind worked like a computer when it came to military tactics. "Dr. Park, how stable is their alliance?" "Not very," Park Seo-jin admitted. "They've only agreed to work together until the humans are gone. After that, they'll probably go back to fighting each other for control of the planet." "Interesting," Ji-woo said thoughtfully. "So we just need to survive long enough for them to remember why they hate each other." Meanwhile, in the deepest part of the mining complex, something strange was happening. The quantum crystals that powered faster-than-light travel throughout the galaxy were beginning to glow brighter. The mining crews had noticed it first, but Engineer Kim Tae-won was the one who realized the crystals were responding to something. "The patterns are too regular to be random," he told Dr. Park Seo-jin when she came down to investigate. "Look at this data." He showed her readings from the crystal formation monitoring systems. "The energy pulses are happening in sequences almost like communication," Park Seo-jin finished, staring at the data with wide eyes. "Kim Tae-won, I think these crystals are trying to talk to us." Above ground, the colonists continued their desperate preparations. Medic Kang Ye-jin had converted the colony's medical center into a battlefield hospital. She was a cheerful woman who had patched up more mining accidents than she cared to count. But treating combat wounds would be something entirely different. "I've got supplies for maybe 50 serious injuries," she told Captain Lee Dong-ho. "After that, I'll be using mining first aid kits and hoping for the best." She looked out the window at colonists hauling supplies and building defensive positions. "Sir, most of these people are miners and farmers and teachers. They're not soldiers." "No," Lee Dong-ho agreed. "But they're humans, and humans have a talent for being difficult to kill." Security Chief Oh Dae-hyun was working with demolitions expert Shin Woo-jin to turn the colony's industrial explosives into defensive weapons. Shin was a former construction worker who had joined the colony because he enjoyed blowing things up for a living. Now he was planning to blow up alien spaceships, which seemed like a natural career advancement. "We can rig the mining charges to detonate remotely," Shin explained while mixing chemicals that probably should not have been mixed. "Plant them in the asteroid field around the planet, and we can create surprise explosions when the alien ships get too close." "Will it work?" Oh Dae-hyun asked. "Probably not," Shin replied with enthusiasm. "But it'll be spectacular when it fails." Communications officer Yoon Ha-na spent her time monitoring alien transmissions and trying to understand what the enemy fleets were planning. The 3 alien species used different communication protocols, different languages, and different military codes. Fortunately, she was very good at her job. "Captain, I've been listening to their communications," she reported. "The aliens are arguing about who gets to attack first. The Velkans want to use overwhelming force to crush us quickly. The Zephyrians prefer a careful siege to starve us out. The Thorians just want to charge in and destroy everything. So they can't agree on tactics, Lee Dong-ho said. No, sir. And they're getting more frustrated with each other every hour, Hana replied. I think Dr. Park was right about their alliance being unstable. As the deadline approached, more strange reports
came from the mining tunnels.
Workers reported that the crystals were glowing so brightly they barely needed artificial lights. Some claimed they could hear humming sounds coming from deep underground. A few swore the crystals were warm to the touch, even though they had always been cold before. Dr. Park So-jin made a decision that would have seemed insane under normal circumstances. But nothing about their situation was normal. She descended into the deepest mining shaft with a small team and approached the largest crystal formation they had discovered. If you're trying to communicate, she said to the glowing crystals, feeling slightly ridiculous, we're listening. Yar, crystals pulsed with light so bright it was visible even through her protective eyewear. The humming sound grew louder, and for a moment Park So-jin could have sworn she heard something that sounded almost like words. Above them, the alien deadline was only hours away. Captain Lee Dong-ho gathered his people one last time before the battle began. They stood in the main hall again, but the atmosphere was different now. Fear was still there, but it had been joined by determination and a uniquely human, stubborn refusal to give up. In a few hours, 300 alien warships are going to attack our home, he said simply. We have 12 ships, some mining equipment, and a lot of explosives that probably shouldn't exist. He looked around the room at faces he had come to know well over 5 years of building a colony together. The smart money says we should have evacuated. But we're not smart, someone called out from the crowd. No, Lee Dong-ho agreed with a smile. We're humans. We're stubborn and crazy and we don't know when to quit. He raised his bottle of soju, which was now nearly empty. So let's show the galaxy why you should never tell humans to leave their home. The colonists cheered, a sound that echoed through the halls and probably reached the mining tunnels below. In those depths, the quantum crystals pulsed brighter than ever before, as if responding to the defiant human voices above. Outside, 300 alien warships waited in perfect military formations, their weapons powered and their commanders confident of easy victory. They had no way of knowing that the planet itself was beginning to wake up, or that the humans were about to demonstrate why their species had spread across the galaxy, despite every logical reason why they should have stayed home on Earth. The 72-hour deadline was almost over, and the real war was about to begin. The 72-hour deadline passed at exactly noon on the third day. Captain Lee Dong-ho stood in the command center watching 300 alien warships arrange themselves in perfect attack formations. Their ships gleamed like deadly jewels against the black of space, each one larger and more powerful than anything the human colony could field. Incoming transmission from the alien fleet, Communications Officer Yoon Ha-na announced. Her voice was steady, despite the fact that she was about to relay humanity's final warning. The main screen activated, showing the same 3 alien ambassadors who had delivered the original ultimatum. This time, their expressions showed cold satisfaction instead of diplomatic politeness. Humans of Kepler 442c, the silver-skinned Velkin spoke first. Your time has expired. You have chosen death over wisdom. We will now demonstrate the price of defying the Galactic Council. The tree-like Zephyrian's glowing eyes pulsed with anger. Your species will serve as an example to others who might consider claiming what does not belong to them. The scaled Thorian showed rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. We will make your destruction swift. This planet and its crystals will finally return to their rightful owners. Captain Lee Dong-ho picked up his nearly empty bottle of soju and took the last sip. Then he looked directly at the alien ambassadors and said 5 words that would echo across the galaxy. Come and take it then. The transmission ended, and the war began. The alien attack came in 3 waves, exactly as their military doctrine prescribed. The Velkin ships attacked first with long-range energy weapons designed to cripple the colony's defenses from a safe distance. Their beams lanced down through the atmosphere with surgical precision, targeting power generators, communication arrays, and defensive positions. But the humans were not where the aliens expected them to be. Engineer Kim Tae-won had spent 3 days moving every piece of important equipment underground into the mining tunnels. The energy beams struck empty buildings and dummy installations while the real colony continued operating from beneath the surface. First wave hitting decoy targets. Tactical Officer Lim Ji-woo reported from her underground command post. All primary systems still operational. Launch the mining drones, Captain Lee Dong-ho ordered. What happened next violated every principle of space combat known to galactic civilization. Instead of responding with their few armed ships, the humans launched hundreds of automated mining drones. These small craft were designed to break apart asteroids and collect ore, but demolitions expert Shin Woo-jin had spent 3 days converting them into flying bombs. The drones swarmed toward the Vulcan fleet like angry insects. Most were destroyed by defensive fire, but enough got through to cause chaos. Industrial explosives designed to crack open asteroids proved surprisingly effective against military shields when detonated at close range. Vulcan lead ship reports moderate damage, Hana called out, monitoring alien communications. They're requesting support from the other fleets. Are the Zephyrians and Thorians responding? Lee Dong-ho asked. No, sir. They're saying the Vulcans should handle their own problems since they insisted on attacking first. The second wave came from the Zephyrian collective, who favored a more methodical approach. Their ships descended into the atmosphere and began systematic bombardment of anything that looked like it might be important. They were thorough, professional, and completely unprepared for what the humans did next. Pilot Choi Min-ho led a squadron of converted mining ships up from hidden launch sites scattered across the planet's surface. The ships were barely spaceworthy, held together with hope and industrial adhesive, but they moved in patterns that made no sense to alien tactical computers. Alpha Squadron, this is Crazy Leader, Min-ho announced over the radio, using the call sign he had given himself. Remember, we're not trying to win, we're just trying to make them really, really angry. The mining ships attacked the Zephyrian formation using tactics that had never been tried in the history of galactic warfare. They deliberately flew into their own explosions to use the debris as cover. They rammed damaged alien ships not to destroy them but to disable their weapons and then escape. They broadcast Earth's most annoying pop music at full volume while firing industrial cutting beams at whatever they could reach. This is not how space combat works, the Zephyrian fleet commander transmitted on an open channel, his voice filled with confusion and growing anger. That's the point, Min-ho replied cheerfully before his ship disappeared into an explosion that he somehow survived. Squad leader Bae Jun-ki commanded the ground defenses when the Zephyrians decided to land troops on the planet's surface. His infantry were mostly miners and maintenance workers armed with industrial equipment, but they had spent 3 days learning to use their tools as weapons. The alien soldiers expected organized resistance from fortified positions. Instead, they found themselves fighting enemies who popped up from mining tunnels, attacked with welding torches and rock-cutting lasers, and then disappeared back underground before anyone could respond. Enemy forces are using the mining complex as a 3-dimensional battlefield, Bae Jun-ki reported to Captain Lee Dong-ho. They can't figure out where we are or where we're going to attack next. Because we don't know either, replied Mediki. Kang Ye-jin, who was treating wounded fighters in an underground medical station, half our tactics involve making it up as we go along. The third wave should have finished the job. The Thorian Dominion brought their most powerful warships down from orbit with enough firepower to level mountains, but they arrived to find a battlefield that looked like complete chaos. Vulcan ships were fighting swarms of explosive mining drones while trying to avoid debris from their own damaged vessels. Zephyrian ground forces were chasing human defenders through a maze of tunnels that seemed to connect every building on the planet. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a handful of barely functional mining ships were flying impossible maneuvers while broadcasting music that apparently drove aliens to distraction. This is madness, the Thorian fleet commander declared. There are no tactical patterns, no logical strategy. They're just doing random things and hoping they work. Sir, his tactical officer replied, I think that might be their strategy. Deep underground, Dr. Park So-jin was making discoveries that would change everything. The quantum crystals were not just glowing brighter during the battle. They were responding to the chaos above with what could only be described as excitement. The energy patterns are becoming more complex, she reported to Captain Lee Dong-ho over the communication system. It's almost like the crystals are enjoying the fight. Crystals can't enjoy anything, Lee Dong-ho replied while coordinating the defense from his underground command post. They're minerals. That's what I thought too, Park So-jin said, staring at readings that showed crystal formations throughout the planet pulsing with synchronized energy. But these readings suggest something else entirely. Above ground, the three alien fleets were beginning to remember why they had spent centuries fighting each other instead of working together. The Velkans blamed the Zephyrians for not providing adequate support. The Zephyrians accused the Thorians of arriving too late to be useful. The Thorians declared that both other species were incompetent and should let them handle the humans properly. Communications Officer Yoon Ha-na monitored their increasingly angry transmissions with growing amazement. Captain, they're starting to argue about who's responsible for not defeating us yet. How long before they start shooting each other instead of us? Lee Dong-ho asked. At this rate, maybe another hour, Hana replied. Hacker No Soo-young had been quietly infiltrating alien computer networks throughout the battle. She was a small woman with thick glasses who had joined the colony because she wanted to get as far away from Earth's internet as possible. Now she was using her skills to make the alien alliance even more unstable. I've been sending fake messages between the fleets, she reported with satisfaction. The Velkans think the Zephyrians called them cowards. The Zephyrians believe the Thorians are planning to claim the planet for themselves, and the Thorians are convinced the other two species are trying to cut them out of the crystal mining rights. Is any of that true? Captain Lee Dong-ho asked. Not yet, No Soo-young replied with a wicked grin, but it will be soon. The turning point came when reactor technician Song Hyun-woo made a desperate decision. The colony's main power plant was taking damage from alien bombardment, and they needed more energy to keep their defenses running. So he did something that would have gotten him court-martialed in any proper military. He connected the power grid directly to the quantum crystal formations. The results were immediate and spectacular. Every piece of human equipment on the planet suddenly had more power than it was designed to handle. Mining lasers that could cut through rock became weapons that could slice through alien ship hulls from orbit. Communication systems boosted, their signals so powerfully that human transmissions could be heard across the entire star system. And deep underground, the quantum crystals began to sing. The sound was impossible to describe. It was music and mathematics and pure energy all at once. It resonated through the planet's crust and up into the atmosphere where both human and alien forces could. The crystal song changed everything. What had started as a simple alien invasion became something far more complex when the planet itself joined the conversation. The three alien fleets found themselves facing not just stubborn human defenders, but a world that was apparently alive and waking up from a very long sleep. Dr. Park So-jin descended deeper into the mining tunnels than any human had ever gone before. The crystal formations down here were massive, some as large as buildings, and they pulsed with light that seemed to respond to her presence. The singing was louder here, a harmony of frequencies that she could feel in her bones. Captain, I need to try something that might be completely insane, she transmitted to the Surface Command Center. The communication system crackled with interference from the crystal energy, but her voice came through clearly. Dr. Park, everything we've done so far has been completely insane, Captain Lee Dong-ho replied. What did you have in mind? I want to make direct contact with whatever is controlling these crystals, she said, placing her hand on the surface of the nearest formation. The crystal was warm to the touch and vibrated with energy that felt almost like a heartbeat. If the planet is alive, maybe we can talk to it. Above ground, the battle had reached a strange stalemate. The alien fleets were maintaining their positions but had stopped attacking while they tried to understand what was happening. The humans were using the break to repair their equipment and tend to their wounded. And somewhere between the two forces, the crystal song continued to grow stronger. Geologist Han Mi-young had spent the last 6 hours analyzing seismic readings from across the planet. What she found was impossible according to everything she knew about planetary science, but the evidence was undeniable. "Captain, the entire planet is one massive crystal formation," she reported from her underground laboratory. "The individual crystal clusters we've been mining are just small parts of a network that extends through the planet's entire crust. It's like the whole world is one giant thinking machine." Engineer Kim Tae-won was dealing with more immediate problems. The power surge from connecting to the crystal network had overloaded half their systems, and his teams were working frantically to prevent complete equipment failure. "We're getting energy readings that don't make sense," he reported, while sparks flew from overloaded circuits around him. "The crystals are putting out more power than they should be able to generate. It's like they're drawing energy from somewhere else." Security Chief Oh Dae-hyun had positioned his people at strategic points throughout the colony, but his real concern was what the aliens might do if they realized the planet was more than just a valuable mining site. "Sir, if those 3 fleets decide the planet is too dangerous to leave in anyone's hands, they might try to destroy it completely," he warned Captain Lee Dong-ho, "and we'd be caught in the middle of that decision." The breakthrough came when reactor technician Song Hyun-woo made an accidental discovery. While trying to stabilize the colony's power grid, he noticed that the crystal energy seemed to respond to human emotions. When people were excited or angry or determined, the crystals glowed brighter. When they were calm, the energy levels decreased. "Captain, I think the crystals are reading our minds," he reported with a mixture of wonder and terror. "Or at least our emotions. They're reacting to what we're feeling." "That would explain why they started singing during the battle," Dr. Park So-jin said from deep underground. "They're responding to our determination to fight for our home." In the depths of the planet, something was stirring that had not moved. For millions of years, the entity that controlled the crystal network had been dormant so long, it had almost forgotten what consciousness felt like. But the arrival of humans and their fierce emotional energy had begun to wake it from its ancient sleep. Dr. Park So-jin found herself standing before a crystal formation that stretched beyond the reach of her lights. The singing here was so loud it seemed to come from inside her own head, and the pulsing light patterns had become complex enough to almost look like a language. "I know you're awake," she said to the crystals, feeling only slightly foolish. "My people need your help. Can you understand me?" The response came not in words but in images that flooded her mind. She saw the planet as it had been millions of years ago, covered in crystal cities inhabited by beings of pure energy. She watched as those beings had chosen to merge with their world, becoming part of the planetary consciousness that controlled the crystal network. And she understood that this entity had been waiting for someone interesting enough to wake it up. Above ground, the alien fleets were growing increasingly nervous. The crystal song had spread beyond the planet's atmosphere and was now audible throughout the star system. Ships that came too close to the planet reported strange effects on their instruments and crew. Communications officer Yoon Ha-na was monitoring alien transmissions when she heard something that made her blood run cold. "Captain, the 3 alien fleets are discussing a new option," she reported. "If they can't control the planet, they're considering destroying it completely. They're talking about using planet-killer weapons." Captain Lee Dong-ho felt his stomach drop. Planet-killer weapons were the ultimate military option, capable of cracking a world apart from orbit. If the aliens decided Kepler 442c was too dangerous to exist, there would be nothing the human colonists could do to stop them. "How long would it take them to prepare such weapons?" he asked. "Unknown, sir, but probably not long if they're serious about this option." Deep underground, Dr. Park So-jin was having a conversation unlike anything in human history. The planetary entity communicated through a combination of images, emotions, and direct transfer of knowledge. She learned that the crystal network extended throughout this entire region of space, connecting dozens of worlds in a web of consciousness that the Galactic Council had never suspected. She also learned that the entity was fascinated by humans. In millions of years of existence, it had never encountered a species that combined such logical thinking with such emotional intensity. The human determination to fight against impossible odds was something entirely new in its experience. "We need your help," she explained, projecting her thoughts toward the crystal consciousness. "The aliens want to destroy our home. Can you protect us? The response came in the form of knowledge that nearly overwhelmed her human mind. The entity showed her the true nature of the quantum crystals that powered faster-than-light travel throughout the galaxy. They were not just energy sources, but fragments of living consciousness scattered across thousands of worlds. And this planet was their central hub. If Kepler 442c were destroyed, faster-than-light travel would become impossible for every species in known space. The galactic civilization that had existed for thousands of years would collapse overnight. Dr. Park So-jin understood the implications immediately. The aliens might destroy the planet to deny it to humans, but in doing so, they would cripple their own civilizations. "Captain," she transmitted to the surface, "I need you to send a message to all 3 alien fleets immediately. Tell them if they destroy this planet, they'll be stranded in this star system forever. The quantum crystals here control faster-than-light travel for the entire galaxy." Captain Lee Dong-ho received the message just as his sensors detected the aliens powering up weapons that could crack planets like eggs. He had minutes to convince 3 hostile fleets not to destroy the world he was trying to protect. "Hana, open channels to all 3 fleet commanders," he ordered. "Channels open, sir." "Commanders of the Velkan Empire, Zephyrian Collective, and Thorian Dominion," he began. "I have information that will change your understanding of this situation. The quantum crystals on this planet are not just valuable resources. They are the central control system for faster-than-light travel throughout the galaxy. If you destroy Kepler 442c, every ship in your fleets will be trapped here forever." The alien responses came quickly and angrily. They accused him of lying to save his colony. They demanded proof of his claims. They threatened to destroy the planet immediately to call his bluff. But Dr. Park So-jin was ready for their skepticism. With the help of the planetary entity, she transmitted detailed technical data about the quantum crystal network directly to the alien ships. The information included equations and energy patterns that no human could have developed independently. The alien fleets fell silent as their scientists analyzed the data. Within an hour, all 3 species had reached the same terrifying conclusion. The humans were telling the truth. "This changes everything," the Velkan fleet commander finally transmitted. "If this planet is destroyed, our entire civilization will collapse." "Then we have a problem," Captain Lee Dong-ho replied. "Because you've just spent the last few days trying to kill the only people who know how to communicate with the entity that controls it." The planetary consciousness was enjoying this development immensely. For the first time in millions of years, it had found creatures that were interesting enough to keep it awake. The humans combined intelligence with recklessness in ways that fascinated it. And now it had the opportunity to reshape galactic politics by choosing which species would be allowed to access its crystal network. Deep underground. The final battle was unlike anything in the history of galactic warfare because it was not really a battle at all. It was a negotiation conducted with weapons powered, threats issued, and the fate of faster-than-light travel hanging in the balance. While a planetary consciousness watched with ancient amusement, Captain Lee Dong-ho stood in the colony's main hall, which had been hastily converted into a diplomatic meeting room. Representatives from all 3 alien fleets sat at a table made from polished crystal that hummed with energy. The Velkan ambassador's silver skin reflected the crystal light in patterns that hurt human eyes. The Zephyrian delegates' bark-like features remained impassive as tree rings. The Thorian representative kept his sharp teeth carefully hidden, but his scaled hands flexed with barely controlled aggression. "This situation is unacceptable," the Velkan ambassador declared, his voice like metal scraping stone. "The Velkan Empire cannot allow a single human colony to control technology that affects the entire galaxy." Dr. Park So-jin sat across from the aliens with crystal dust in her hair and data pads covered in equations that she had learned directly from the planetary consciousness. "The entity controlling the crystal network has made its position clear. It chooses humans as its representatives because we're the first species that interested it enough to fully wake up. Humans are primitive," the Zephyrian delegate said with the slow certainty of speaking trees. "Your species has barely achieved interstellar flight. How can you represent interests that affect civilizations thousands of years old, communications?" Officer Yoon Hana was monitoring the discussion. while also keeping track of the alien fleet still positioned around the planet. "Captain, I'm detecting movement from the Thorian ships. They're repositioning for what looks like an attack formation." Captain Lee Dong-ho glanced at the display showing ship positions, then looked directly at the Thorian representative. "Are your people planning something we should know about?" The scaled alien's eyes narrowed. "The Thorian Dominion believes this negotiation is a waste of time. If the planet cannot be claimed by force, perhaps it can be claimed by eliminating the human negotiators." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Engineer Kim Tae-won's hand moved toward the emergency controls that would activate the colony's defenses. Pilot Choi Min-ho's voice came over the communication system from his barely repaired fighter craft. "Captain, my squadron is ready to launch if things go sideways." But Dr. Park Seo-jin was smiling, and that worried the aliens more than any human weapon could have. "I think you should speak with the planetary entity before you make any irreversible decisions." The crystal formations throughout the room began to glow brighter. The harmonic singing that had become the background noise of their lives grew louder and more complex. And then something happened that made every being in the room, human and alien alike, freeze with shock. The crystals spoke. The voice was vast and ancient, composed of harmonics that resonated through bone and metal and consciousness itself. When it spoke, everyone present understood the words regardless of their species or native language. "The humans interest us," the planetary entity said through every crystal in the room. "They fight when they should surrender. They negotiate when they should flee. They make jokes when they should show proper respect. This species will represent our network because they are unpredictable enough to keep us awake." The Thorian representative stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the crystal floor. "This is absurd. A planetary consciousness cannot simply choose favorites among galactic species." "We are not choosing favorites," the entity replied with what sounded like amusement. "We are choosing entertainment. For millions of years we slept because galactic civilization had become boring. Predictable conflicts, standard diplomatic solutions, military doctrine that never changes. Then humans arrived and did things that made no sense according to any logical analysis." The Velkan ambassador leaned forward, his silver features reflecting the dancing crystal light. "What exactly did humans do that was so remarkable?" "They were told to leave or die," the entity explained. The logical response would be evacuation or immediate surrender. Instead, their leader said, "Hold my drink," and began preparing for impossible victory. Captain Lee Dong-ho felt heat rise in his cheeks as every alien eye in the room focused on him. It seemed like the right thing to say at the time. "Indeed," the planetary consciousness agreed. And that phrase has become quite popular throughout our network. Crystal consciousnesses on 47 worlds now use it as their standard response to unreasonable demands. The Zephyrian delegate's glowing eyes pulsed with what might have been confusion. "You are restructuring galactic politics because you found a human phrase amusing?" "We are restructuring galactic politics because humans demonstrate that consciousness can be both intelligent and entertainingly irrational," the entity corrected. "They solve problems through creative chaos rather than rigid doctrine. They form emotional attachments to places and ideas. They refuse to accept defeat even when defeat is mathematically certain." Tactical Officer Lim Ji-woo had been quietly monitoring the alien fleet positions throughout the negotiation. "Captain, the Thorian ships are definitely moving into attack formation. I think they're planning to strike despite the consequences." The Thorian representative confirmed her assessment by standing and addressing the crystal formations directly. "The Thorian Dominion rejects this arrangement. If we cannot control the quantum crystal network, we will deny it to everyone. Our planet-killer weapons are already charging." The response was immediate and spectacular. Every crystal formation on the planet began to glow with light bright enough to be seen from orbit. The harmonic singing became a roar that shook the ground and rattled equipment. And then, the planetary entity demonstrated why it had controlled faster than light travel for millions of years. The Thorian fleet found their weapons suddenly offline. Not damaged, not destroyed, simply inactive as if the universe had forgotten they existed. Their engines continued to function, their life support systems operated normally, but every offensive capability vanished without explanation. "How is this possible?" the Thorian representative demanded. "Quantum crystals exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously," Dr. Park Sojin explained with satisfaction. "The entity can manipulate the fundamental forces that make your technology work. Your weapons are not broken. They simply no longer exist in the dimension where they could cause harm." The demonstration had its intended effect on the other two alien fleets. The Velkan and Zephyrian ships immediately began powering down their weapons and requesting permission to negotiate in good faith. "We understand the entity's position," the Velkan ambassador said carefully, "but the Velkan Empire requires access to quantum crystals for our civilization to function. What terms would the planetary consciousness find acceptable?" The entity's response came through every crystal in the room, but this time it sounded almost playful. "Humans will serve as intermediaries for all crystal network access. They will establish protocols, negotiate disputes, and ensure that the network is used responsibly. In return, all species will acknowledge human sovereignty over this planet and provide appropriate compensation for administrative services." "Administrative services?" the Zephyrian delegate asked. "Paperwork," Captain Lee Dong-ho said with a straight face. "Lots and lots of paperwork." The aliens looked at each other with expressions that probably indicated confusion in their respective species. The idea of humans becoming the galactic administrators of faster-than-light travel was so absurd, it had never occurred to any of them. But the planetary entity was not finished with its announcements. "We have decided to establish similar partnerships with other interesting species. The crystal network extends throughout this galaxy and into others. We will seek out civilizations that demonstrate creativity, unpredictability, and the ability to surprise us." Communications Officer Yoon Hana looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm receiving messages from 17 different star systems. Apparently other planetary consciousnesses have been listening to our negotiations, and they want to establish human administrative offices too." "Administrative offices?" Captain Lee Dong-ho repeated. "Embassies," Dr. Park Sojin corrected with a grin that suggested she was enjoying this development immensely. "We're about to become the first species to establish diplomatic relations with living planets." The negotiations continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once the planetary entity had chosen its representatives. The 3 alien fleets agreed to recognize human authority over Kepler 442c and to pay substantial fees for continued access to the quantum crystal network. In return, humans would establish a galactic administrative system to manage crystal access for all species. The Thorian representative was the last to accept the agreement, but the complete disappearance of his fleet's weapons made resistance pointless. "The Thorian Dominion agrees to these terms," he said with poor grace, "but we reserve the right to request new negotiations if human administration proves inadequate." "Of course," Captain Lee Dong-ho replied diplomatically. Then he grinned and added, "But if you want to renegotiate, you'll have to go through the proper paperwork channels."